Radio. It is Carl Schoening. It is the off day here in Utah for the NBA Summer League, the round-robin tournament that includes the host team, the Utah Jazz, the San Antonio Spurs, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Boston Celtics. They have all played 2 games. They have one more tomorrow on Thursday before a couple of those teams head over to Las Vegas for the biggest part of the Summer League, the part that actually involves a tournament and several games, which the San Antonio Spurs are looking to repeat their title, along with assistant coach for the Spurs, who will be the head coach in Vegas, Becky Hammon, Kyle Anderson, and Jonathan Simmons, who are both playing stellar here in Utah. It's going to be a fun next few weeks as the NBA season wraps up pretty much. I always consider this the end of the NBA season, as the finals ended in June, then we have the draft, and once these young players are assigned to their teams, and then some of these other guys get to go on their summer league squads to try and get some training camp going, this is kind of the wind down before the lull in the NBA season, where we have very little off-season news kind of in the August time, and then around September when training camps are getting ready to go again, we kind of hear about who got in shape and, who's improved their shooting and all of that stuff. But right now, the offseason kind of kicks off with both free agency and some NBA Summer League, so we're going to talk some Spurs Summer League. You can contact me on Twitter. The handle is at K_show15. Once again, K_SCHO15. I'll be taking your questions if anybody is interested in checking it out. I'm looking forward to hearing from any of y'all, and I'll happily answer your questions on how the Spurs are doing. We have a few audio clips to get you to. I got to get my microphone in on a couple interviews from Bryn Forbes, who's been quite a surprise for the Spurs the first couple games, the shooting guard out of Michigan State. He's had a really strong start to the Utah Summer League, if anything else. We also talked to Kyle Anderson after his first game, where he probably had his best game so far of the 2. And then we also talked to Jonathan Simmons after yesterday's game against the Philadelphia 76ers. So why don't we just jump right into that? Going into yesterday's game, the Spurs 2 days ago game, I should say, the Spurs went up against the Utah Jazz. And in that game, the Jazz kind of got off to a hot start thanks to a good start by Trey Lyles, who went 4 for 5 to start the game for 11 points, but the Spurs were able to key in on him and hold him to only 2 more the next 3 quarters, and then they were able to pull away pretty easily from the Jazz there in the second quarter, and then later on throughout the game to eventually win that game 90-69. Just kind of look through the box score before we get you to those interviews from Anderson and Forbes. Kyle Anderson had a stellar game. In 26 minutes, he put up 25 points, went 10 of 16 from the field, knocked down 2 of his 3 three-point attempts, got to the line 4 times, hit 3 of those, had 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 steals, which is something to note, only 2 turnovers, and he had the ball in his hands a good amount, so that's not a bad number. And Kyle Anderson just had one of those all-around good games, and that's not really a surprise because Kyle Anderson has the most NBA experience out of anybody out here on these 4 teams so far. We do have Trey Lyles, who was playing for the Jazz, and Tibor Pleiss, who was kind of at the end of the bench playing in the D-League last year for the Jazz. He's the 7'3" German center that they have, but both of those, Lyles and Pleiss, will be able to play a good amount for the Jazz this upcoming season. But going back to the Spurs, Jonathan Simmons also had a pretty solid game. He played 28 minutes and scored 18 points in that 28 minutes, went 7 of 15 from the field. The one concern that pops out when you look at his line is the 1 of 7 from three-point attempts and also his 4 turnovers. That's probably just him trying to do a little bit too much on creating off the dribble. And also, his three-point shot it looked inconsistent at times out there. Kind of little form mistakes, not quite getting his feet set, not getting his feet underneath him, putting his elbow underneath the ball kind of thing. He let it fly out a couple times, and he really just kind of couldn't find it from 3, but the good news is he still has that athletic ability to get the first step on his defender, attack the rim. He has good body control, so he's able to draw fouls and get to the line. So Simmons so far, despite that 1 for 7 from 3, everything else has pretty much been very good for Jonathan Simmons. Brian Forbes has been the surprise. He got off to a hot start against the Utah Jazz and made 2 of his first 3 three-point attempts. He missed the next 2 after that, but overall he went 6 of 9 from the field and finished with 16 points in 26 minutes. He also posted the highest plus-minus, if you put anything into that stat on the box score, at plus 26 out of anybody on the either team, especially the Spurs, who went on to win. Usually the winning team has the players with the highest plus-minuses. Just a few other players going that started off in that game for the Jazz. Alex Kirk, the product out of New Mexico, played 20 minutes. He didn't really do too much. Went over 2 from the field. He just grabbed a couple rebounds, committed a couple fouls, had a turnover, no block shots, and he still posted a plus-minus of 22. So, that's where it comes down to, do you put much stock into that? Because he was in the starting lineup, so obviously that kind of helped out when the Spurs were able to just jump out and eventually use that starting unit to build upon the lead there in the second quarter. And for those of you who don't know who Alex Kirk is, he's a 7-footer. He's a legit 7-footer. And he can even shoot a little bit. He shot around 38% from 3 in the Italian league last year. And he's lost about 30 pounds compared to when he played in the D-League in 2015. So he's down to about 245. He looks it. He looks more athletic. He's moving around a little more than probably someone who would be at the 280 where he was around last year. But at the same time, he's not necessarily the most skilled man down low. He's not that quick. I don't think he has NBA athleticism. So he's just kind of a big man to fill out the Spurs Summer League roster. But, you have to kind of take a chance on those guys who, over in Europe, he shot well enough that if you could be a stretch 7-footer, that could be a good asset to somebody on the team. But so far, he's been mostly unimpressive. We'll talk about his numbers in the second game as well. Ryan Arcidiacono is actually playing pretty well. Good distributing point guard. Obviously, he was on the national championship Villanova team, and that gave him some good experience. A lot of people, were kind of interested in to see what he would do as he comes into the NBA. He went undrafted, and the Spurs signed him pretty much right away to a training camp contract, and now he's on the starting lineup for the Summer League team. Checking out his numbers against the Jazz, he played 23 minutes, only shot 2 times, made one of those buckets. It was a 3-pointer, and he went 1 of 1 from 3 in that game. He had 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He fouled 4 times, which was interesting. I didn't even notice that until now looking at the box score. He had 2 steals and only 1 turnover, and he posted that plus-minus of 17. My thing about Arcidiacono is he's probably a little too selfless right now. I think maybe as a point guard he thinks he needs to distribute, and he has found a lot of good open looks for his teammates. But at the same time, I kind of feel like he's being a little too passive. He's passed up a couple layups that if he had made it, it would be impressive towards the coaching staff for the Spurs. But at the same time, he did still get good looks for his other teammates. Some of them didn't go in because his 4 assists probably don't quite translate into how many open looks that he's actually given his teammates. But definitely a distributor, pass-first point guard. If the Spurs could get him to be a little more aggressive, he probably could have upped those 3 points to maybe about 8 or 10. And he only played 23 minutes, so it's not like you were expecting stellar numbers from an undrafted rookie. But Arcidiacono definitely has some skill distributing the ball. He's not particularly NBA-sized point guard. Doesn't have NBA athleticism for the most part, but definitely a good ball handler. At 6'3", probably about a 6'3" wingspan, really. Not too explosive. He needs to be that distributing point guard, and he didn't do too bad of a job so far through 2 games, but you'd like to see him be a little more aggressive with his shot. Also, interesting name that didn't really do too much, and I think a lot of Spurs fans that looked at the roster weren't quite sure what to expect of him, but Elijah Gromovs only played 13 minutes, pretty much didn't put up any stats, just a few rebounds, a few fouls, had an assist, And he's kind of just a big body. He pulled his name out of the 2014 draft, and I think he went undrafted in 2015 and played in the Baltic League last year. Spurs just decided to bring him on over and see what he could do. Player who actually impressed in that first game and hasn't done too much since he got off to a hot start in that first game was the Temple product, Will Cummings. Looking at his numbers, 16 minutes, he had 3 of 8 from the field. He had a hotter start than that. Only went 1 of 5 from 3, which he's improved upon in the last couple of years, but this is the time where if you're going to show that improvement, this would pretty much be it, as he can get into the paint at will. That's pretty much a given his speed and ball handling skills, but finishing around the rim is also kind of an issue for Will Cummings. So he still has a little bit of work to do if he's going to try and make somebody's training camp roster, but he did get off to a good start in this game, and he finished with 7 points as well as 3 assists, but I want to say that most of those assists and points came in his first 5 minutes, and then he didn't do too much in the next 11. So unfortunately for Will Cummings right there, he couldn't quite capitalize off of a hot start, and he even finished with a -4 for the Spurs. Another guy who got off to a hot start was C.J. Williams. He actually banked in his first three-pointer, and then he proceeded to make 2 more for his first 9 points, and that was it. He went 3 of 5 from the field after that. He missed his next 2 shots. He finished with 11. And, yeah, C.J. Williams looks like a good shooter. I think that he has a chance to maybe do a little bit more. He was actually kind of playing the stretch 4 position for about a 6'6" guard, so he has some bulk on him. But I think that overall, the thing about C.J. Williams is he needs to continue that hot start that he had, and he didn't quite. So that's kind of why, you hear me talk about Bryn Forbes. I think Forbes has a potential, the way he's gotten off to a hot start the first 2 games, to really make an accelerated chance at a roster spot. But you can't really put too much stock into one game for these guys, because it's more. That's why we play so many games. You have the 3 games here in Utah, and then you have the games over in Vegas, which you could probably have as many as 5, 7, depending on how far you go into the tournament play after the pool play. And that'll be the real opportunity for all of these guys to show consistency. That's almost what teams are looking for in these summer leagues, because they're obviously not going up against NBA talent sometimes. You talk about the second unit of some of these teams, looking at the people who came off the bench for the Utah Jazz. You have Deontay Christmas, who you might have heard of. He's bounced around the league a little bit, and Europe and the D-League, but that's probably one of the few names that you'll actually recognize. Tyrone Wallace, not somebody who jumps off the page at you. Joel Bowenboy, who was a product of Weber State, so you're talking about a Big Sky Conference player right there. Marcus Page, who I believe that's the UNC Marcus Page. He went undrafted, so you're going to have to see if the Utah Jazz maybe, give him a little bit more time. But, yeah, really these second-unit Summer League guys are going up against mostly players that will have to play in the D-League or Europe next season, and not necessarily NBA guys. So if they get off to that hot start, these players need to capitalize on their opportunities and continue. A couple other names around the Spurs Summer League lineups were Eric Wise, who played in Iceland and South Korea last year, and he only got 6 minutes in that first game. Angel Rodriguez, the product out of Miami, who made 3rd All-ACC team last year, but he's kind of undersized for an NBA point guard, only about 5'10", 175, so he only got 4 minutes too, so you're talking about guys who probably need to find their spots. Angel Rodriguez might get about 10, 15 minutes somewhere in Vegas, maybe tomorrow against the Celtics, but some of these guys at the end of the roster aren't even going to get too much of a shot. So kind of a thing about the Summer League teams, that you're not really going to have any of these players on your radar after you see them play this, 3 to 7 games that they have a chance to play in. So I told you guys that I had a little bit of audio. I will play that right now, as the first day we got to talk to Bryn Forbes and Kyle Anderson. So we'll get you those interviews right now, as I will pull them up and start them for your listen. It's recorded on a phone, not quite as good quality as this, but go ahead and hear what they had to say.
summer league action?
This is Bryn Forbes.
How'd you feel?
It was fun, to be back on the court. I haven't played 5-on-5 in so long. It was just a fun experience.
Word is you can shoot the ball. People say.
Yeah, I guess so.
What makes you think, gives you that talent, especially how you're going to be able to do that on the NBA level, being able to the height?
I just work on it, footwork, trying to speed up my shot, just trying to perfect my shot so that I can get it off quicker and it's the same shot every time.
8 rebounds, did that just come to you? Or?
Yeah, that's the most I've had since like high school. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't even have that in high school. So.
Yeah. What stood out about, joining the Spurs team opposed to others? I don't know if you had any other interests in people.
I think, I've heard so many great things about, the Spurs organization from everybody that I know. Just the way they do things, the way they've got a great staff, the way they run their teams. And, I kind of like playing with these guys, the way they're coached, everything about them.
Spacing, Will said that you know how to space the floor well. Can you give an example of how you are able to do that?
Just being able to make shots. They got to stay a little bit closer to you than other people. If you're a shooter, if you're wherever you're at, they got to stay 3 steps closer to you instead of being 3 steps over and help. So then you got to drive, and then if they do help, you got kicks. You got a lot of easier shots even for the bigs and everybody. So it helps to have shooters on the floor.
Is that one of your strengths, being able to know how to space the floor?
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely think so.
Are you going to work on playing some point guard out here tonight to get some point guard skills in at this level?
I want to. A little bit. I got to bring the ball up the court a couple times, on fast breaks. Probably did 4 or 5 times. It'll be good, but I'm also going to play to my strengths too. Playing to my strengths is the most important part.
What are your other strengths except for shooting?
I think I can defend. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to do everything it takes to win.
You know what that means on this level, playing defense is different than college.
It's a lot more thinking. I made a few mistakes tonight where I wasn't really, I was caught in my college, the way we ran things, and then, but I think just thinking, if I can get the thinking part down, I think I'll be good.
Was there a point in the game where you knew you were in a groove after hitting some shots?
Getting to the paint a couple times, I thought, I could get rolling. Kind of got rolling a little bit.
So that was Bryn Forbes talking about his first performance with the Spurs, and he had a good game there as he started off hot. He kind of cooled down a little bit, but overall Forbes definitely played a good game in that first game and raised a few eyebrows. But like I was saying earlier, he needs to continue and show some consistency. He did attack the basket a couple times, as he was saying. Not quite sure that would translate to the NBA level as you talk about those bigger defenders. You heard Jabari Young asking about it. Those bigger defenders are definitely going to make his shot a little harder to get off, and also definitely the couple times that he's shown off the ability to penetrate, he's going to deal with much better defenders outside and inside. So even though he shows flashes of being able to penetrate and finish in the lane, I'm not quite sure you can expect that to translate to the NBA games when he gets a chance. It would be a pleasant surprise if they did, but at the same time, you're talking about a guy who's probably 6'3.5" in shoes. He's playing that off-guard position. He did talk about spacing. I think that's important. That's almost something that you see that a lot in players who are young, that they don't quite understand NBA spacing. They don't give the big men operating space down in the post. They don't quite know how to move without the ball to work the defense away from those ball handlers. So obviously, a shooter is very important in him, in those kind of guys, but you're talking about a guy who's not going to grow that much more. He definitely does hustle, and he is a tough defender, but toughness and hustling don't quite make up for 4 inches, and maybe if he's playing off guard, he won't be able to work in that 6'6" guard who might even post up on him every now and again. You think about it, he'd have to be guarded by somebody similar to a Danny Green for the Spurs. So if he were out there and you're dealing with those longer Iman Shumpert kind of players, the more athletic guys who can close out on you faster, you got to get that shot release quicker. You definitely got to talk about that footwork that he brought up and hopping into your jump shot. And he seems to be doing a good job overall on all of that. but it's one of those things where you pull for the guy because it's kind of a underdog story, and so far the underdog is doing well. But Bryn Forbes definitely looks like a good guy, seems like a Spurs kind of player. If he can really show off that consistent shooting touch, he might be able to get his way in, earn a roster spot. He's not quite the size of Gary Neal necessarily. Gary was actually, I think he was listed at 6'4", but he seemed to be about 6'5" in shoes, a little bit taller than that maybe. And he was a little thicker as well. You're talking to about Bryn Forbes. He's smaller. He has some long arms, but probably not much longer than his height. So I'm thinking, I want to say I saw a measurement from Portsmouth that he was a 6'5" wingspan for a 6'3" size. So that's a little bit above average wingspan, but still not necessarily anything elite. So he's definitely going to have to become an elite shooter in order to really make his mark on the NBA. We have the Kyle Anderson interview. We'll get to that in a moment, but we have a couple questions here. One of them about Kyle Anderson. Do you think Kyle Anderson can legitimately play the 4 in the NBA, and what does he need to work on the most to achieve this? Yeah, the NBA, it's a small ball league, and at least it's gravitating towards that. And Anderson, he has a legitimate 6'9", 245 frame. And I think he can maybe even pack on a little bit more weight. He has that post-up game. He has that great fadeaway. His shot has gotten a little bit quicker. But, they call him slow-mo, and it's not necessarily because he's slow. And I think that's almost put off some people that his nickname is slow-mo. He has exaggerated moves to where you can see what he's doing. He reminds me a lot of Boris Diaw, and Boris can definitely play the 4 in the NBA because he has a little more bulk on him. But when Boris was younger, he kind of looked a little like Kyle Anderson. Anderson's definitely a little leaner than Boris ever was, but yeah, Anderson definitely has been hitting that weight room. He looks a lot quicker to me, but he plays at his own pace, and that's kind of the unique thing about Kyle Anderson. Overall, I think Anderson definitely does have a chance to be a 4 in this league, depending on who he can match up against. He has that 7'4" wingspan. He is long. He's getting better as a defender. When he was at UCLA, I don't think he quite was interested in playing defense. He seemed out of stance a little bit. He didn't quite understand how to use his peripherals when defending off the ball, so he kind of lost his defender a couple times, and those are things that the Spurs will pretty much, the bad habits will be forced out, or you're not on the roster. So definitely he came to the right team. He's a passing forward. He can see passing lanes really well. And I think overall Kyle Anderson definitely has a chance to be that kind of combo 3-4 depending on what kind of lineup you're going to use with him. So definitely think that Kyle Anderson can play the 4. He can even play a little 3 in the NBA. We'll get you his sound bites, but we also have one more question from Twitter. The Spurs have reached a verbal agreement with Davis Bertans on a 2-year deal. What can Spurs fans expect from him? Well, Bertans overall showed a good amount of athleticism overseas. He did have back-to-back ACL tears in his right knee, but we've kind of reached the point in modern science where that cannot necessarily be that big of a deal. Obviously, it required surgery, and overall, in the long run, that might hurt him down the road in his athleticism. But for the time being, he supposedly has that athleticism back. It looks like it. He is a lights-out shooter at 6'10". He's only 23 years old, and now you bring him over to the Spurs. I'm going to assume that he's part of this youth movement. The Spurs are going to be bringing a lot of young players in, a lot of under 25-year-olds, probably under 27-year-olds to really fill in for these, older guys who are retiring. You don't know what's going on with Tim Duncan at the moment. Manu Ginobili is coming back for one more year, so you obviously have to look at that. How are you going to replace him? So Matt Bonner, he's probably going to be retiring sometime this year, next year. So Bertans, athletic, he needs to put on some size. He's still kind of thin for an NBA 4, but he can be that stretch 4 that can shoot pretty well from the corners that the Spurs need. So I think Bertans, smart player. He's played in Europe in the men's leagues since he was 18 years old. Spurs got him in the Kawhi Leonard trade, and that was one of those things where the Spurs got a good steal. In fact, you really look back at that Kawhi Leonard trade on draft night 2011, the Spurs have somebody like a Davis Bertans and an Irzam Lorbeck come to them for George Hill. Pretty solid lineup right there for rebuilding that youth lineup, and Kawhi Leonard obviously the cornerstone of the franchise now. That was a pretty good trade for the Spurs. Interesting thing to note, Lorbeck actually, he's on the Spurs roster here in Utah, but he is not with the team, or at least I haven't seen him. I Google imaged him to try and see if I could run into him and talk to him, because he's been playing with Barcelona for the last, I guess, 6 years now, since the 09-10 season. He can stretch the floor a little bit. He's not necessarily a dominant rebounder, but he has good skills around the stretch four position. He could probably defend a little bit, although his athleticism is on the decline since I think he's 32 right now. He would be the oldest player in the Summer League here in Utah if he were around, but he is not here, but I think he'll be in Vegas. I don't think he would be on the roster if he weren't going to show up at some point during Summer Leagues. Also, have a question from Michael DeLeon from Project Spurs. What are your thoughts on Murray possibly playing tomorrow? He's itching to play tomorrow. He's definitely excited to get a game in here in Utah before he goes over to Vegas. If I'm not mistaken, the 7th is when the Spurs can sign him due to some juggling with the salary cap, and I think that was what's going on, and I'm excited to watch him play. I think he definitely has athleticism that the Spurs will like. Not any kind of explosive athleticism, but very fluid athlete, good ball handler. He needs to work on tightening it a little bit, tightening up that handle, but once he can really slash and be creative with the ball at the NBA level, the Spurs probably have a really talented young player. Maybe a couple years away from really helping, but that 29th pick overall, the Spurs have done a good job in the mid to late 20s developing those guys slowly, letting them learn from the veterans, letting them play in the D-League, which is usually a step up from where they were last year at the college level, or maybe somewhere in the lower divisions over in Europe. And I think Murray has a good chance of being a good Spur for a good while. He's going to sign that rookie scale deal, and he seems like a smart young man. Even 19-year-olds, the Spurs don't go after too many of those freshmen out of college. The last one they went after since DeJounte was Corey Joseph. So that worked out. I think Corey Joseph even showed off how the Spurs developed him when he was really given a chance to do a lot of creating and run some pick and rolls with the Toronto Raptors this year, and he ended up being quite the steal for them. Obviously, DeJounte Murray has some questions on defense, but as I said earlier, the Spurs usually try to straighten those out right away. And I think he also needs to work on his three-point shooting, making that shot release a little bit quicker, but he was only a freshman last year, and he averaged 16 points a game in the Pac-12, so I get the feeling that he's going to probably impress a little bit here. Maybe not tomorrow, but I'm excited to see him in person tomorrow. But in Vegas, I think after he gets a couple games under him, gets back into his rhythm, I'm excited to see how DeJounte Murray will do with the Spurs Summer League. And then he'll probably get a good amount of playing time in training camp as well as before the D-League season starts with the Spurs, as Pop does need to start getting those young guys some minutes and start this youth movement this year for the Spurs, while they're still going to be a very veteran-heavy team, veteran-led team. You got to get those young guys like Bertans and DeJounte Murray good amount of time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get back to the interviews, talk to Kyle Anderson 2 days ago after the team finished their game against the Jazz, and here is Kyle.
Missing some early shots out there. Was it just a nerve thing?
No, not nervous. I wasn't nervous. Just missed a few shots, easy ones that I normally make, so just had to get going in the flow of the game.
Game kind of seems slow out there to you. Is it faster for just some of these new guys who don't have NBA experience, and for the NBA guys it's a lot slower?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. Just slowing down and playing my game at a pace that makes everything a lot easier.
You feel like you got to set the tone for the game, being as though that you are, you're the man on the team?
I don't look at that. I just play the game, really. I don't just go out there and play ball. I don't look at, being the man or, I know I got to set the tone in different aspects, but as far as, establishing myself as the man, I don't really, look at that.
When did you get in the groove in this game? It appeared to me after the second quarter.
You said when?
Yeah.
Second quarter, I think started finding some teammates. We started getting stops, and I just made easy shots for us. Once we
learn different things or asking you questions?
I don't think towards me. I think towards our system and our unselfish way of playing. I think guys are enjoying that and doing a great job of adapting to that, and that's just making it fun. Everybody's sharing the ball, guys are scoring, everybody's getting involved, so that makes it a lot more fun.
Can one win set the tone for the rest of the summer?
We just got here. Last year in Utah we didn't do well, and then we ended up playing well in Vegas, so it could turn. Hopefully we can keep it going and stay steady.
It feels different. You guys are the champions.
It is, I guess. I guess people will be coming after us. We got 2 NBA guys on our team, so everybody will get everybody's best.
What are the similarities and differences between the system for Summer League and like the regular season with the main team?
I would just say difference is personnel, really. With the Spurs during the regular season, they're playing with guys who know our system. Here, guys are just getting adjusted. Similarities is being unselfish. I think our team did a great job of being unselfish today.
None of the lingo is dumbed down or the plays shortened?
No, we keep the same one. Guys just got to learn it, and they're doing a great job of learning it, and it's working out.
3-point shooting, you went 2 for 3 tonight. Are you going to improve on that, like try and make that part of your game going in next year?
Yeah, definitely. Just try to get some reps up, get a lot of shots up this summer, and get comfortable and have confidence in actually taking a shot, and then worrying about making it eventually.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
That was Kyle Anderson talking about his performance after the first game against the Utah Jazz. And now, after we've pretty much wrapped up all of the first game thoughts, we'll head on over to the second game. The Spurs went up against the Philadelphia 76ers without both of their first-round draft picks, Timothy Luau, who was drafted 24th overall, as well as Ben Simmons, the first overall pick. Simmons had some calf cramps in both legs when he played the Celtics, and that was unfortunate timing because it was the end of a close game, and he wanted to really show off. I actually got to see that game, and he's an extremely impressive passer. He seems to be a couple steps ahead. Doesn't quite know his teammates yet. Maybe still has to get a little bit better feel for some of the NBA game and the spacing. I noticed a couple times maybe a lob pass would have been better than a bullet pass. But, yeah, Ben Simmons is going to be a real fun player to watch at the NBA level. But without them, the Sixers kind of struggled. It was a fun game for Spurs fans as Kyle Anderson, Jonathan Simmons, and Bryn Forbes combined for 81 of the Spurs' 95 points. And those three really set the tone early, and after that 18-16 first quarter, the Spurs went on to outscore the Sixers 31-26 in the second, and it was a close first half. I think 47-43 was that halftime score if you add up those two numbers that I just talked about. But then the Spurs outscored the 76ers 36-19 in the third to open up a 20-point lead entering the fourth quarter. And then the Spurs kind of got complacent. I think they started off the quarter with Jonathan Simmons, but Anderson and Forbes might have been on the bench. Can't quite remember, but I know Anderson came in somewhere when the lead was cut down to 14, and then the Sixers got some momentum going. Even though that Simmons, Anderson, and Forbes had gotten back out there, they eventually cut the lead down to 2 before, with I think 10 seconds left, they turned the ball over, and somehow the officials kind of made it interesting. What happened was the Spurs, Arcidiacono, was able to knock the ball loose into the backcourt, and he dove after the ball. A Sixers player dove after the ball. No one had possession, it seemed like, but the Sixers called timeout, and they were out of timeouts, but the officials granted it to them because they weren't paying that close of attention to know that they didn't have timeouts, and you still grant the timeout even if they have it, and that leads to have it or don't, and that leads to a technical foul. Kyle Anderson missed that technical foul, but then the Spurs got the ball back, and I haven't seen this in an NBA game in a while. I think the only other time you can really think about it is common knowledge, I guess, was when Michigan was playing, I think Duke, was it? And Chris Webber was the one who called timeout. And, that led to a technical foul. But I think the college level, the rules are a little different. At the NBA level, I guess they give the ball back. Bryn Forbes was fouled, and he went to the free throw line to knock down a couple free throws and ice the game at 95-91 with 6 seconds left. But overall, talk about the Spurs stat line in that one. 30 minutes for Kyle Anderson, 23 points, 10 of 17 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3. So you hear him talking about that 3-point shot. He's definitely been knocking him down pretty well. 3 of 6 in the second game, 2 of 3 in the first game. So if that can translate to the NBA games, which I think out of everything here, rebounding and 3-point shooting are the things that translate from Summer League to the NBA, then Anderson, he can be a little bit of a threat out there finally here in his third year. He had that mid-range jumper off the one-dribble pull-up, I think a lot of you remember, from near the top of the key. But overall, Anderson knocking down threes will be huge for him at the Spurs. Jonathan Simmons played 31 minutes and set a Utah Summer League record 35 points. That only goes back to last year when they started up the Utah Summer League again. It doesn't count anything before when they had the Summer League here a few years ago and for several years before that. But Jonathan Simmons, 35 points, 13 of 18 shooting. He went 1 of 7 from 3 in Game 2. He was a lot more selective with his jump shot here. Went 1 of 2 from 3. The defender started to play him off the drive, and he saw that and came up with some silky smooth mid-range jumpers off the dribble. And that's probably what you want from Jonathan Simmons right now. He doesn't necessarily need to be a three-point threat. You'd like that. But he's athletic enough that he could probably attack defenders closing out on him and get to the rim pretty well. I think with Manu showing sign, this will be the last year for Manu. You're going to see Jonathan Simmons try and step into that, offensive initiator off the wing, create his own offense off the second unit. You don't know what Jonathan Simmons is going to be developed into, but the Spurs definitely taking a good look at Simmons, and he had a really good game. He went 8 of 9 from the free throw line. He had 7 rebounds, 5 assists. He did have 9 turnovers, but some of them weren't his fault. Some of them were clearly his fault, and a little too strong on some passes over the corner. But, that's why they play Summer League, so you can try and figure out what you're good at, what you need to improve at, those kind of things. But Simmons, with those 35 points, definitely got a lot of fans in the Utah stands, and even at a certain point after he had 31, I think he was at the free throw line, and a fan yelled, "Simmons, you're too good for Summer League," and that's pretty much accurate because Anderson and Simmons really don't need to be out here, but I think the Spurs want to give them more alpha dog reps because they're not going to get it with the main club team. So it's good for these young guys to see what they can do with the ball in their hands, and if they can turn this efficiency into the 13 of 18 for Jonathan Simmons, he's probably going to get maybe 5 shots a game, 6 shots a game with the Spurs coming off the bench. So, if he can continue that kind of efficiency on his field goal percentage and be selective with his 3-point shots, then I think he definitely has a chance to be a very good rotation player for the Spurs and improve upon his rookie year last year. Caddy Lalane got the start over Alex Kirk at center for the Spurs. He only played 11 minutes, didn't really do too much. He committed 5 fouls. You get 10 in the Summer League, but I think the Spurs also noticed 5 fouls in 11 minutes. You don't want to send teams to the line that much. Bryn Forbes did have a great game again, though. Forbes in 28 minutes had 23 points, 8 of 10 shooting from the field. He went 4 or 5 from 3. He improved upon his first game, which, I talked about it earlier. Anybody can have one good game in Summer League. They want consistency, and when you show consistency shooting, that's something that will raise a few eyebrows around the league. He finished with a plus-minus of 12, and he pretty much played some solid defense out there too. Going up against the Philadelphia 76er squad, that the most notable name that you might recognize from them was Christian Wood, the UNLV product. He only played 20 minutes, but he played an impressive 20 minutes, and with the front court jam that the 76ers have, they actually decided not to pick up Christian Wood's option, even though he's still on their summer league team. So Christian Wood, expect him to be in somebody's training camp, and he actually had some first-round aspirations. There were some mock drafts that had him going in the first round in the 2015 draft, and oddly enough, he went undrafted and signed with the Sixers and played solid overall. What do you expect? They only won 10 games last year, and they didn't really have any kind of guard play, so that pretty much trickles down to the post play as well. And yeah, Christian Wood, pretty much the only player out there. You had some DNPs from T.J. McConnell, James Nunley, who played well in the first game against the Celtics, and Ben Simmons, obviously, as well as Timothy Luau and Rashawn Holmes. So they basically kept out anybody that you would have heard of, and the Spurs treated him like that. They were shooting 70% from the field at one point, 73% from three, and there in the fourth quarter they had the percentages even out where I think they only made 5 field goals in the fourth quarter of that game. But the Spurs went on to win that one 2-0 is their improved record after that win. And let's get you Jonathan Simmons' thoughts from that game here in a second as I pull it up. Got to get Jonathan Simmons quotes after the game. Here's what Simmons had to say.
Does it feel different being here this summer after you?
No, it's all basketball. So just be out here to play hard and win games and show Spurs way. So this is what we are here to do.
You certainly established yourself a little bit more last season. I didn't know if that gave you any comfort level or any
I mean, definitely give you a comfort level when you get to go against the elite guys in the NBA. So definitely give you a comfort level and a confidence that you can play and just to dominate.
Will said that you guys, played that fourth. He called it sloppy.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yes, very agree. I think the altitude kicked in. Yesterday it was kind of light on. I didn't feel the altitude at all. I think the altitude kicked in a little bit, but no excuses. We just got to pick it up and play better, but we found a way to win, so that was good.
And did you take it upon yourself to be aggressive this game?
Well, that's just all they telling me is just to be aggressive and, just play hard. Just keep being aggressive and you're going to get some calls you ain't like, but just tell me to keep going, so this is what I try to do.
What's impressed you so far about the young kid, Bryn Forbes?
He's tough. He's a tough little light skin. He's tough and he can shoot it, he knows the game a little bit.
Yeah. He's surprising you at all, because
I've never really seen him. I'm not a big college fan, so just seeing him out here is impressing me a lot.
Yeah, remember Kyle said the distance bothered him when he first got into the league. It don't seem like it's bothering you, and it definitely doesn't bother him. When he says that, is it a distance thing where you got to learn how to shoot the NBA three and shoot it from different places on the court?
Yeah, because that range is definitely a big difference maker, and it makes you use more of your legs. So it's something that you have to get a lot of reps. You just can't. If you ain't no shooter, you have to just shoot down 1,000 shots a day. So definitely the distance plays a fact.
He looked like he has it.
Forbes has it. He's a shooter, so I don't think it'll bother him at all because he's been shooting all his life. So it's just about reps and using your legs more, I guess.
When he's out there and he's spacing the floor as well as he does, how does that make the game easier for you and Kyle?
Because nobody's going to help off him, and me and Kyle not jump shooters like that. We want to get to the rim and get to our mid-range, so it opens up the floor for us.
Was that a case today where you was able to see the lane more because of him?
Yeah, because of him, because his help wasn't helping, and one time I turned it over looking for him because his man was looking right at me, and he just something he have to learn about the NBA game is shaking up and reading your man and me, so he'll get it.
Yeah, so he was the reason why you had one of those turnovers.
Yes. I told him, he was.
How much does it help that you have this comfort level with Kyle because you've spent so much time with him over the last year?
Oh, it definitely helps a lot. He's my guy. We're very cool on and off the court. And we just try to make each other better and, stay positive and stand each other ear to get better.
I don't know if you heard, but, Boris was traded here.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you going to miss particularly about him?
Boris is maybe one of the best teammates we had, so definitely going to miss that.
Thank you.
So that was Jonathan Simmons' thoughts on the game against the 76ers. As he said, they got a little sloppy there in the fourth quarter, but overall the Spurs did a good job of holding off, basically. They had that 20-point lead dwindle down to 2, but then Arcidiacono made a great hustle play to basically save the game, and some weird things went on, but Spurs win that one 95-91. Jonathan Simmons drops 35, and you have the Spurs go ahead and pull off the victory. So we are going to have one more of these podcasts tomorrow night after the Spurs play the Boston Celtics. That game will be actually at the Huntsman Center where the Utah Utes play. That game tips off at 6 o'clock Central. You can catch it on NBA TV. I'll be there. I'll be live tweeting. You can follow me at K_show15. That's at K_SCHO15. And keep up with what's going on with the Spurs game. I'll also be at the 76ers Jazz game, mainly to just check out how the Sixers are doing. Looking forward to seeing Ben Simmons play one more time. And also Timothy Luau will hopefully be playing as well. You did hear Jonathan Simmons talk about Boris Diaw leaving, and unfortunately, Boris was traded to the Jazz. He was a fun player for the Spurs. He did a lot of things. He was kind of a utility player in a way. You could even really fit Boris at the 3. There were times where, if you remember in the 2014 finals, Boris was guarding LeBron James. He had that kind of quickness, even though people kind of gave Boris a little bit of mess over his general size. The Spurs kept him kind of lean, and in reality, he kind of reminds me of like a Big Papi, Prince Fielder maybe 3-4 years ago, back when you're talking about these bigger guys who really they're just muscular. They probably don't have the quite nutrition plans to keep their nutrition plans and extreme high-intensity cardio to really slim down, but Boris Diaw, definitely one of the better players for the Spurs. Kyle Anderson, he's showing that he can step into that Boris Diaw role, and the way he's been playing the last couple games, I think the Spurs, while they're going to miss Boris being the savvy veteran and fun guy in the locker room, I think Kyle Anderson can step into that Boris Diaw role and play well, but only time will tell. So, anyhow, that will just about wrap it up. I thank everybody for listening. It's been a good podcast, first one I've done in a little while. Happy everybody tuned in, and the Spurs are playing well. Last game is tomorrow, like I said, against the Boston Celtics. Then they head off to Vegas. I'll be watching that one on TV. I won't be there. Wish I would, but at the same time, not quite sure I'd be able to make it to all the games because of all the extracurriculars. I've never been to Vegas before, so I'm sure I might not have been able to make it to every single game. You know how that goes. Anyhow, thank you for tuning in, and keep an eye on Twitter, and we'll get you the link for the next time that we do this. Thanks.